What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from Zoom again, and this time we are here with Jed of the Almighty Vimic. It is great to be able to talk with you. Thanks for coming on the show, paying tribute to the one and only Joey Jordison. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, man. Absolutely honored to be here.
Yeah, dude, it's an honor to be able to speak with you because I remember when Vimic was first discussed, when seeing it talked about on all the metal outlets and all that, and to see Joey Jordison come back into the fold with drumming, but also to collaborate with you, given your incredible work with Strapping Young Lad and who playing with Frontline Assembly and so many other great bands, we're finally seeing a collaboration that I've been wondering when the hell we're going to finally see it. So, do you think that this album has a new meaning now that it's seeing the light of day today in 2025 versus, I believe, 2018 around there? Or is it very much the same, you would say?
Because of all the things that, went on previously, I kind of pushed it to the back of my mind and kind of got on with other stuff and just kind of let it go because I didn't think it was really ever going to see the light of day. But now that all of this is happening, it sounds great. It sounds fresh and new and current and vital. And I mean, there's whole feeling about it now too. There's a completely different vibe. So I think it's befitting of the time that it's being released. It sounds good to my ears. I don't have any of those older negative feelings about it. It feels right now, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it.
Well, I was wondering with the formation of the band, because this wasn't, I believe, you and Joey's first collaboration together. I believe Scar the Martyr was your first time collaborating. So when forming together and creating Vimic, was there at all maybe sort of a similar mindset or a familiarity, you knowing how to work together, or was it almost like still both of you stepping into completely uncharted territory as far as collaborating?
It was a seamless transition, really, and I have to say, it wasn't my idea to kind of change the name and move forward. It was just a natural progression. Felt like we needed a different way to outlet the music, and especially with bringing a new singer on board, that just felt like the right thing to do too. Scar the Martyr was fun though. I had a blast doing that stuff, and I'm not a big 8-string, 7-string guitar fan. I'm straight old school thrash metal 6-string guy. So when I started using the 8-string stuff, I was talking to my friends and the guys in Meshuggah, and they're like, "Welcome,"
Right.
And they're laughing too because I'm like, I got little hands,
it was
anyway.
hard.
So it was a whole new experience to me, and then I got used to it, and we did the Scar the Martyr, did the touring, and then we needed a fresh start. And so pivot and go kind of the same way, but off away from that general sort of thing, more towards all-in-one sort of mentality group kind of thing.
Welcome to the world of 8-string. It was hard enough when it was just 6. I don't know why and you go to NAMM nowadays and you see these guitars that look like ironing boards, and they have at what point does it just become a harp?
Yeah. At what point do you fire your bass player?
Good God, don't have a bass players.
I mean nothing by that.
Haven't bass players been through enough?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird. I'm still not a fan, really. But hey, it is what it is. You know?
Yeah. And by the way, for everybody who likes to make fun of bass players, just remember Lemmy and Peter Steele probably got more girls than any other guitar player or singer combined. So
there you go. Yep. There you go, Matt.
When it came to the formation of Vimic and what we're hearing with this work, was this the vision from the start? Was this always sort of the idea of what Vimic was supposed to sound like, or was the songwriting process a very experimental and very sort of improvisational one?
It was kind of a combination of both, I would say. We let the music come as it may. It was totally, we did it. We figured it all out at Joey's house. We'd all converge, and we'd get up in the morning, eat breakfast, and head to the jam room and just go all day, every day. And that's how it all came about. There was no real set idea, or it was just, what do we got? Let's go.
Well, being like such a prolific artist too, like because aside from Vimic, playing with Strapping Young Lad, playing with again Devin Townsend, playing with Scar the Martyr, Frontline Assembly, so many different bands. Does your creative process change depending on the project you're working with or the musicians that you're playing with, or is there sort of like a method behind the madness that just sort of applies to everything you've been involved with?
I think it's just an ability kind of to adapt to any situation. I'm a diehard thrash death metal kind of guy, you know what I mean? But I appreciate all music and I like being involved in all kinds of music. So it's cool that I've gotten to do all the things I've done. And, on this record, my input was actually relatively small. But it just because it was such a group thing, I'm kind of sharing it all equally, and again, I'm at a loss for words because it just felt right.
Do you express like a different side of yourself with every project too? Because I mean, Vimic is brutal and it's intense and it's in your face, and then you have like, but then you have like, very progressive elements like collaborating with Devin Townsend. So like, I mean, how like do you almost like express something different upon yourself instrumentally?
I guess so. I guess, a band like Vamic gives me a different outlet, as it were, a way to express myself in different ways, perhaps. Brutal, that was Strapping. Brutal, that was my solo thing, Tenet. Vimic seems, it's heavy at times, but there's a good range of music happening there. It's not just, for 40 minutes. There's a bit of a ride going on there, and I think that's cool. That it's enjoyable to play. That's enjoyable to just hit them hard and then put on the brakes and give them something else entirely. And there's a couple songs on this record that really hit hard with me. Like you know how you can read your own sort of version into a song, read your own meaning into songs and stuff. And there's a couple songs on this record that mean an awful lot to me. I lost my dad in 2017, and some of the songs, when we play them, I literally almost come to tears because I'm they might mean something else, but you read your own meaning into them and they mean something to you. And that's kind of the cool thing about this music. I think anybody that's listening is going to be able to relate, read their own meanings into the music. And, like a lot of your favorite bands, you're not sure really what they're talking about sometimes, but you get a feeling and you make it your own, and it becomes something important to you. So I think the Vimic is a really good example of that.
Do you, and it's funny as well, because I've heard some musicians say that, especially when they play metal, that, and when they have like the thrash influence that you said you have, that when they have to play a slower song, that it's actually more difficult for them. I've even said to myself that I think maybe James Hetfield would have a harder time playing Fade to Black or One or Nothing Else Matters than playing like Master of Puppets or Fuel or something like that, because it's like you're more naked when you're playing something slow. Like you may stumble a little bit when you're playing fast, but you slightly botch a note in a slow song, everyone's going to hear that.
Yeah, you don't want to botch those long single notes in a slow song, and I have. But I grew up. I'm a child of the '70s, so I mean, before the metal all stuff, I'm a diehard hard rock guy, and I've always appreciated pace, space, in a song. AC/DC, comes to mind immediately. You got to learn how to play, and then you got to learn how to not play. You got to let everybody breathe, And a lot of the great '70s hard rock bands, Cheap Trick, Aerosmith, Nazareth, Bachman Turner Overdrive, they were all really good at that, And so that's something that I can contribute, to a band is not necessarily an old guy. They always call me Grandpa Metal, but sort of like a veteran leadership. Like I know, I like, hey, we should do this here, we should do that there. I'm better at arranging, a lot of the time. Like, hey, we should break here. Hey, maybe stop that there, or let's pause. Let the music breathe rather than just playing over every, all the time.
Well, it's great that you referenced AC/DC, because when no better way to tell if your guitar's out of tune than that introduction to Hell's Bells. It like that.
That's right.
And I've worked on guitar floors before. I've heard that introduction out of tune before. It is like the most unbearable. Like it is nails on a chalkboard rubbing styrofoam together type of sound.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan, and always have been, particularly the Bon Scott years.
Yeah.
But I started playing guitar because of Ace Frehley, but I kept on playing guitar, and still to this day, because of Malcolm Young. He's my absolute hero. I'm a rhythm guy, and so I appreciate that sort of mentality where it's just get the job done, meat and potatoes, not too much fluff. And that's my MO,
Yeah. Well, I think with the introduction to Hell's Bells, I think that was written with the intent of nobody's going to dare to try to butcher this song and try to get that to that provision. But like,
it's glorious, man. It's glorious.
And it's cool to hear you mention the Bon Scott era, because my favorite AC/DC song is like one of those very underrated ballads, that track "Ride On" from the Malcolm Young era. That's a very underrated and very very heartwarming and wholesome track, I would say.
Yeah, the very first song I ever learned on guitar was "Sin City" by AC/DC. So I have a love for that album, Power Age, and that was how I cut my teeth on them.
Being a rhythm guy, and I'm really glad to hear you mention that too, because there are guitar players where like you almost enjoy their riffs and the rhythm they contribute. One of my personal favorite guitar players is Dino from Fear Factory, because he's a very rhythmic driven guitar player and all about like the riffs and the riffs. So being a very rhythm driven guitar player, when you're playing with other guitar players or even in a band, are you looking at the rhythm? Were you listening for this album in particular? Were you listening to how Joey was playing to know how to adjust your playing style? Are you listening to the bass and more of the rhythm, or do you like maybe prefer to have like a whole song written already before you know how you're going to contribute?
For me, it's really simple. It's me, bass, drums, and we have to be tight as a nuns, what. It's important that everybody locks in together, you know what I mean? And I don't care what it is, what you're playing, the fastest song, the slowest song, you're only as good as your rhythm section, and you're only as good as your drummer.
Yeah, the famous saying.
So I think it's really important to not stray, and me and Kyle, we always have this thing, and it's this is what I brought to the table. It's the AC/DC mentality. Stand back, let the singer do the show. It's me, Joey, Kyle, do our job, and when we do background vocals, we walk up to our mics, we do the vocals, and then we move back in front of our amps, and we're just locked in right there.
It's almost like a dance. It's almost like a choreography in a sense.
In a sense, it is. But it's just simple meat and potatoes stuff.
Do you find that, and this has been a question I loved asking artists when they're working in like a studio, because I've been in a handful of recording studios, and it's a very like static and very like controlled environment. I've always heard about fun days in the studio, and kicking back, but I mean, in the end too, you're surrounded by all this high-end gear, there's professionalism to maintain, like you can't go all out in a studio, I feel, as far as like your personality or presence is concerned. So how do you sort of like achieve that live energy in a studio? Is it mainly in your effects and on a very like technical aspect, or do you maybe just have to kind of play in a certain way into the studio to get in that sort of feeling?
I think it's just about, I'm just gonna say it again, it's just about getting in there and getting the job done, and when I was younger, the studio was fun. You could bring all that energy to the room and get it done pretty quickly and have a blast doing it. As you get older and more, professional, there's sort of a different mentality with that, but the end result's still got to be the same. It's got to be packed with that energy. So I think you have to just kind of relax, pace yourself. Don't be intimidated by what's going on around you in the studio or what you're seeing or who's there or whatever. Relax, and when it's your time, make the best use of it.
I wanted to talk a little bit. This is sort of like a new question I'm proposing, and this has sort of been something I'm asking from like a more personal spot, because it kind of has been flowing through my mind and a couple of other people. None of us, regardless of what era of rock and roll we've entered, are getting any younger, right? And we're always growing up, and our perspectives change, our minds change. The only constant in life is change. Now, this music will always speak to us, but, maybe the music speaks from a perspective that maybe we don't feel anymore, or maybe, like, the we listen to it for a different reason, or we don't like to. You get the point. Like our interpretations and our feelings towards the music change. But again, you still need, when you're writing this music, there has to be passion, and I sense that in all of your music. How do you maintain that passion? Because we all need to grow up one way or another. We don't want to completely abandon, that inner child, but we all have to grow up in one way as well. So how do we grow, but also maintain that passion that we got when we got into this?
That's a good question, and the answer is not easy because I'm not sure. I'm 61 now, and I got a teenage son and a wife and a home and things to take care of. But I think it's key to don't let the magic die. You know what I mean? Because when you're young, the world is magic. Everything is cool and amazing. And I think you have to sort of bring that, like, I still believe in Santa Claus sort of attitude. It's just like, don't let that magic die. Be young. Don't be young in mind, at least. And just have fun as much as you can, enjoy the moment, because maybe those moments are fleeting now, like they are for me, where I've kind of stepped back a little bit. I like being at home. I like my comforts. But don't get down on everything. Just, I don't know. It's a difficult question to really answer directly.
Yeah, because
but I think just that sense, that feeling that music gives you, hold on to that.
Absolutely. I think one thing that never gets old is discovering a new artist, and that the feeling when you first hear that and it hits you, that feeling never goes away. That's a high and a rush. But I've interviewed musicians who've been doing this, for 20, 30, 40 years, and some of them would say, I'm the same, teenager I was when I was in the garage. I'm like, okay, at 31, I could tell you that I was a jackass in my 20s. And you can look at my earlier interviews and see for yourself. Like, we're all, stupid in our 20s. Like, so I feel like we do. So I feel like that in the world of rock and roll, there's sometimes almost a stigma against the idea of growing old and growing wiser. But at the same time, it almost seems like it's inevitable at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. And, I was wild in my teens and 20s as well. And I really didn't get going professionally until I was in my 30s, and I'm thankful for that, because by that time I had started to kind of figure shit out, and so I could apply myself more towards the music and less towards the partying, as it were. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and partying. Anybody who's we've all said in our 20s, I'm gonna do this till the day I die. No, you're not.
Yeah.
And anybody in your 20s watching this, no.
Yeah.
But
truth.
Exactly. I wanted to circle back, and I'm sure that everybody is asking you about this, to what is it like to work with Joey? And as somebody who's never had the privilege of seeing him perform, or seeing him play, it's something I've always wondered, because we all have our famous drummer stories. I'm sure, we've all seen the Kiss drum set with the fire and everywhere. But for me, it was seeing Joey with that mask, with the pyro and, all the Slipknot guys, that made me, love the rock and roll drummer. Now,
right.
Being and when I watched him play, not even just with Slipknot, but when he filled in for Metallica even at that one time, his rhythmic energy is just a force to be reckoned with. Collaborating with him, what has he taught you? Has he channeled has his energy or his influence maybe contributed to your hand? Because you mentioned that you're a rhythm guy as well. So how do you approach the concept of rhythm differently after working with a legend like that?
You know what? Not much has changed. We're not so dissimilar. Like, you mentioned the Kiss thing, and I just have to circle back to that for a second, because Joey and I are both massive Kiss fans. I mean, massive. And I mean, you can see how it influenced him. Just look at what he's done. But, I don't think we're so dissimilar when it comes to all of that. Those influences, kind of wear them on our sleeve. And what I learned from him is just to kind of appreciate who I am as a player, because he respected that and always gave me my space. And we just got along together. I've been lucky to play with some pretty fucking good drummers. And so playing with Joey was awesome, but we clicked pretty quickly, because we had similar sort of I don't know, vibes going on, or we grew up similarly, even though he's a little younger than me.
Yeah.
You know, and just a side note quickly, when I was going to stay at his house for the very first time, he's a Kiss fan. He's got this huge Kiss collection. He totally dressed up my entire bedroom with all the Kiss banners and posters and mirrors, had Kiss blankets and pillows. That was my room, and that was his generous soul. He was such a good dude.
Yeah, no, I've heard so many amazing things. Like for me, that was always like a a dream drummer to talk to, because it wasn't even just with Slipknot, but you go down a rabbit hole and you see his work with Murder Dolls and all other projects he's been involved with, and you get admired, and it's cool because, like, again, I've talked to so many drummers from his generation who have that same Kiss story, seeing the drum set light up and everything like that. But for me, like, as somebody who's 31, I grew up with the Slipknots and the Avenged Sevenfolds and the Disturbs and stuff. So for me, that was that moment. So I just his legacy lives on for a lot of young drummers. I know so many young musicians who are drumming because of him, and I know that my story is not a very original one for my generation as well.
No, but it's interesting because it's, and here's a story that Joey told all of us. Sorry, I'm getting a call. I just had to block it. The story he told us was Slipknot was rehearsing, someplace, sometime, and Kiss was just down the hall rehearsing as well. And I can't remember exactly how it went, but Gene ended up in their room and, kind of was talking to them a little bit. And he kind of went like this, gave him a nod, and kind of walked out and whatever. And Joey says he and I think it was Paul, they looked together. He goes, "I think Gene just passed the torch," like, and when you think about Slipknot and what they do, I'm like, oh my God, maybe that's true. So you can see how Kiss influenced Joey, and that became, it became their own thing, but that helped them to become who they are, perhaps, and influence the next generation of people in the same way Kiss influenced, say, me way back.
Yeah.
That a bit of a convoluted story there, but there's a parallel there.
It's cool. It's really cool to witness that, and I'm excited to see, because nowadays you see the rise of a lot of newer bands that are taking off, whether it be Sleep Token or Bad Omens or Spirit Box, Lorna Shore, and like these, and I'm seeing younger kids like in their early 20s, late teens, mid 20s, who are like fawning over them the same way that my generation and the generation before me fawned over this. And to see that cycle repeat in real time as you get older, it does make you, going back to the growing old and maturing question, one thing, like, the music itself is never going to die, and I think as we witness that more and more, I wonder, like, every year I've noticed that there's a band that explodes. 2021 Turnstile blew up, 2022 Lorna Shore took the world by storm. So it's cool to see it happening more and more on repeat.
There is a cycle that seems to come and go, and it's necessary, because otherwise shit gets stale.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time and for telling me all these amazing stories and allow this amazing album to finally see the light of day. And I'm so excited.
That's what this is all about. I mean, it is for us, but it's for Joey. You know what I mean? This is proper cementing a legacy, a massive legacy, and I couldn't think of a better way to do it than honoring him. Yeah. And I'm just glad that his family got involved, acquired the rights to the record, and was able to start all of this. So I'm grateful to them. They're some of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. A whole family. Yeah. My bandmates in Vimic, it's just a bunch of good people. So this is all right and proper in my mind.
It couldn't be. It's just such an honorable way to honor somebody so amazing. And I know that in rock and roll heaven, he is just, smiling down upon all of us. And he's with all the fans who are finally going to be able to listen to this music and, hear him knock shit out of the park one last time. Is there just anything else with the release of this that we could be expecting, or you would like to share or promote from Vimic? And what else would you like to plug? Feel free to say whatever you like on here.
Yeah, I don't really want to muddy the waters. This is about Vimic and Joey and really nothing else. Yeah. I'm looking forward. We're going to do a show, I guess, in September sometime, where the band's going to get back together. We're going to play some Vimic with some guest drummers, friends of Joey's. So that's something to look forward to, and it'll be kind of like the candle on the cake or the icing on whatever it is. It'll be a nice thing to look forward to and get to hang out with the guys one more time and pay tribute in a live setting with some of his friends. And I think that'll be a nice, I don't want to use the word finish because that sounds so final, but
Yeah.
you know, it'll be a nice way to kind of end that cycle, as it were.
Of course. It's hard to kind of like, you know, promote it without
It
like
is.
muddying.
I don't even like speaking about him in past tense because he's right here, man.
Yeah,
It's in my heart.
It's difficult, but hey, we appreciate you so much. Everybody, we are here with Vimic. This is Alex from Heavy New York. We will see you next time. In honor, we love you, Joey Jordison.